The filamentous Spirogyra reproduces asexually, simply by the breakup of its filaments into smaller sections. This is called fragmentation. This is possible because the filaments consist of many identical cells, each capable of living independently. Spirogyra also reproduces sexually by a process called conjugation. In conjugation, two filaments adopt a side-by-side position, and the walls of adjacent cells unite to form a conjugation tube. The protoplast of one filament then migrates into the other filament, and the protoplasts fuse to form a diploid zygote. The zygote develops a thick capsule and transforms into a zygospore, which is capable of surviving in unfavorable environments. During germination, the zygospore undergoes meiosis, but 3 of the newly formed haploid cells degenerate. Therefore, only one cell matures and develops into a new filament. Conjugation usually occurs between 2 individual filaments. However, in some species, cells of the same filament can also undergo conjugation.
Sexual reproduction in plants. In this module, you will learn how sexual reproduction takes place in flowering plants. It is spring season. Flowers are blooming on the trees. It is indeed a beautiful sight. Flowers attract all of us. They are the most beautiful part of the plant, isn't it? You already know that flowers are not present only to add beauty to the plant. They are in fact the reproductive part of the plant. In the flower, stamen is the male reproductive part, while carpel is the female reproductive part. Some flowers contain both male and female reproductive parts. Such flowers are called bisexual flowers. For example, pea, China rose, etc. On the other hand, some flowers possess either the male or the female reproductive parts. Such flowers are called unisexual flowers. For example, corn, cucumber, etc. Now let us know about the different parts that make up a stamen and a carpel. A stamen is made of 2 main parts, anther and filament. The anther produces pollen grains. It is the pollen grain that contains the male gametes. A carpel, on the other hand, is made up of 3 parts. The terminal part is called the stigma. The middle elongated part is the style, and the swollen bottom part is the ovary. Inside the ovary, ovules are present. It is the ovule that has the female gamete called the egg cell. For sexual reproduction to take place, a male gamete is to be fused with the female gamete, thereby forming a zygote. Now for that, the male gametes have to reach the female gametes. For this, first a pollen grain carrying the male gametes is transferred from the stamen of a flower to the stigma of the same or the other flower. Such transfer of pollen grains is known as pollination. If the pollen grain of a flower lands on the stigma of the same flower, it is called self-pollination. But if the pollen grain of a flower lands on the stigma of another flower of the same or another plant of the same type, it is called cross-pollination. Pollination occurs with the help of different agents like wind, water, or animals. Once a pollen grain reaches the stigma of a suitable flower, a tube grows from the pollen grain. This tube travels through the style and reaches the ovary. The male gamete from the pollen travels in this tube and reaches to the female gamete present in the ovule of the ovary. After that, the male and the female gamete fuse together to form the zygote. This process of fusion of male and female gametes is called fertilization. The zygote formed after the fertilization then divides several times to form an embryo inside the ovule. The ovule develops a tough coat and changes to a seed. The ovary, on the other hand, ripens and forms a fruit around the seed. At this time, the other parts of the flower, like the sepals and petals, fall off. So, a seed present inside a fruit contains an embryo, which is actually a baby plant. Each time a seed is planted in soil and provided appropriate conditions, it grows into a seedling, which then
Germination. The journey of a seed to a seedling passes through many stages of growth. In the early stages, when a seed is placed in moist soil, it absorbs the water around it. The water then reaches the beginning of the baby plant or the embryo within the seed. This makes the embryo grow and increase in size. Eventually, the embryo breaks open the seed coat and comes out of the seed. The root comes out first and grows into the soil. This fixes the baby plant to the soil and helps the root absorb water and nutrients from the soil. Then, the shoot comes out of the seed and starts to grow towards the sun. The first pair of leaves that come out of the seed with the shoot are called cotyledons. The root grows longer. The shoot becomes green and sprouts more leaves. This is a young plant and is called a seedling or sapling. For all these stages of germination, essential conditions or factors are required.